Hi, I'm Mark Schroeder, the head of client relations at GSHC Surrogacy Agency, and today we're speaking to Casey O'Connell, an attorney at the law offices of Falletta and Klein. Casey, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks for having me.
For international intended parents, what happens if they're not in the United States for the birth of their child?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we've done and some documents that we offer our clients to protect them in this regard is if the parents cannot be present for the birth, whether that's because the birth was premature or because of the pandemic that we're currently experiencing and the travel restrictions imposed as a result, then we can have the parents sign what's called a limited power of attorney or a nomination of guardian for their child to nominate a caretaker to take custody of the child upon discharge from the hospital, care for the child just as if they were the parent until the parent can arrive. So that's how we protect them against not being present when the child's born.
And how do international intended parents return to their home country with their child after the delivery?
So there's some paperwork here, obviously, that needs to be completed first. So when the child is born in the United States, they're automatically a United States citizen under the laws of this country. So when a child is born here, if they're a citizen, to travel outside of the country, the parents will have to obtain a U.S. passport for their baby. So there's that process to go through. Also, there's the process of obtaining their birth certificate from the county in which the child is born. So that process can take weeks of time depending on what's going on in the world. Right now, it's taking a little longer because of the virus. Traditionally, it can take 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks to be present in the U.S. with their child before they can take the child out of the country. In addition to that, depending on where the parents are returning to, they would have to visit a consulate or embassy of that home country here in the U.S. to address any sort of documentation that that home country would need as well. So for example, there are documents that if the parents are coming from China and returning to China, they have to go to a Chinese embassy here in the U.S. to complete some documentation there before they can do that as well. That process does not take as long as the passport and birth certificate process, but it's an additional step.
And how long do international intended parents have to wait before they can return to their home country with their baby?
Yeah, so I'll give you two answers here. So let's think about maybe we're in a world where the virus isn't affecting everything. So in a normal functioning society, they have a few options here. The birth certificate process depends on the county where the child's born. For example, in San Diego County, where we office, we can have the birth certificate prepared more quickly than some other counties around California, just because they function a little differently. So we usually advise our clients to expect the birth certificate process to take 10 to 20 business days, depending on the county. Once they have that birth certificate, they can then go get a passport. They have the option to expedite that when the government is functioning as they normally would. And they can have that passport done in a matter of a few business days if they pay to expedite that. There's also a little rule that they have to have their travel back home planned within the next 14 days if they can, to even be able to expedite that passport. So there's some timing to plan there for that process. If they don't expedite the passport, that can take 4 to 6 weeks to have that done and sent to them. So it's just a matter of their personal preference, how long they can stay here, and then also whether they're able to expedite anything or want to. Now, if we're in a virus world like we are right now, the expedited passport services, from what I understand, are not offered right now because government employees are not at the office. They're not able to facilitate that service. So passports are taking upwards of 6 to 8 weeks right now because of the virus outbreak.
For international intended parents, will their baby be a United States citizen?
Yes, that's a simple rule here in the U.S. If the child is born within the geographical area of the United States, they are a U.S. citizen.
Will an international intended parent's baby have dual citizenship?
And that's another question that depends on the country they're returning to. So some countries will allow the child to be a dual citizen. Most of those countries are in Europe, from what I understand. If the intended parents are from China and returning to China, the child cannot be a dual citizen of the U.S. and China. So again, another question that depends on where they're coming from and where they're returning to.
For international intended parents, how often do they have to travel to the United States during the surrogacy process?
I guess from start to finish, that depends on where they are with their biological assets. So have they created an embryo yet? Is that here in the US? Do they need to come over here to do that process? So that could be one trip to have that done. Outside of that, their presence in the US really isn't needed until we recommend about a month before the due date. They come over here and be ready for the child to be born and to care for it and take custody and manage all the paperwork we just discussed. So that's one or two, if maybe only one, if they already have the embryo created and it's here in the States.
I'm Mark Schroeder, and this has been a conversation with Casey O'Connell from the law offices of Falletta and Klein. Casey, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Mark. Anytime. And if your clients ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help.